Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Wicked Parley. I'm your host, Justin, and my fellow co-host, Rose. Tonight, we're going to be discussing corruption. But I have a special guest today I'd like to introduce. His name is Aaron.
Hey there.
So, are you excited, Aaron, about discussing corruption?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah? What about you, Rose? You don't want to talk about corruption?
It's a half and half, kind of thing, just because, it's corruption.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exciting, but, there's always some dirty shit in the air,
Yeah, always. Hi, host. Good to
Hi,
see you back.
host. Welcome back to another episode, huh? You gotta be getting tired of this at this point, right? At some point, you're gonna get bored with us. I'm sure of it. Maybe. Anyways. We gone. We got them all. Alright. And we're winning. Okay.
It's
So-
Ron.
So, Rose, Aaron, like Aaron.
Yes.
Yeah, Aaron.
Hey, Aaron. Hello,
Aaron.
Mr. Pokemon.
All right. So, anyways, now that we've gotten that out of the way, and people have, had a chance to say hello to the new guest, the temporary for tonight's episode. What's the first question?
Yeah, we're going straight into them.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, here we go. What?
Question number one. What do we mean when we say corruption?
Okay. All right. Let's just throw up the Merriam-Webster definition first,
Yes.
and before you just jump into it. Want to read it off?
So,
It's the
yep.
first one or two.
Yep. So, according to Merriam-Webster, corruption is a dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people, such as government officials or police officers, or inducement to wrong by improper or unlawful means, such as bribery. There's a couple of others, but today's episode is more focusing on the first two.
Yeah, definitely the first two. All right, Aaron, I'm gonna hit you with the first one. What would you define corruption?
Well, I think that corruption is basically when someone who is in a position of power, kind of like how the Webster said, is basically abusing that power to have some kind of gain in their favor.
I mean, would an example be like, for instance, like when a priest rapes a small boy and then hides from it? Would that be an example?
I think that's a bad example, but I guess.
I mean, that's definitely
I think
corrupting
that's
influence.
that's not corruption. That's just evil.
I
So-
agree. That is evil. It's very evil.
That's a strong first example, mister.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you gotta hit him out of the park first, right?
Yeah, I know.
All right. What about you, Rose? What are you thinking?
It's kind of just, for me, you take something that could be pure, could be good, could be even just neutral, doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't go out of its way to harm anybody, and you make it kind of in a way that hurts people, whether emotionally, mentally, physically, any type of lily.
Okay. I mean, like, to me, I would define corruption a little differently
Right.
than I think either of the things that have been represented. I think corruption is something that kind of occurs whenever you take something that is good and you warp it into something that is bad. I think anything in between that particular line is a form of corruption. So I'm very general on my particular definitions.
Fair. So, when it comes to corruption, question number 2 here. If you had to make a rough estimate, how long would you say corruption has existed in the world? Not just the concept of corruption, but the actual action and consequences of it.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump on this one first. Okay.
Okay.
I think corruption has been around for as long as people have existed. As long as people have been self-aware, there's been someone out there trying to one-up the other person, and I'm sure bribery plays a role. I'm pretty sure taking something that's innocent and pure and twisting it to your own whims is definitely something that is just inherently, unfortunately, human. So, what is your thoughts on that, Rose?
I would kind of agree on it. It's just kind of each and every one of us has some sort of selfish aspect of it, and how that's expressed can either be something small or it can be a lot bigger and lead to some type of corruption if we're going for Aaron's definition of it's for like someone's gain
Mhm.
at potentially the harm of somebody else.
Yeah.
I have to tack it on to that.
Okay. And what about you, Aaron? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think that if there's any sort of competition with anything, like say financial or just anything in general, there's going to be someone who's going to want to one up someone else, and generally speaking, some people don't care, so they'll do anything to get ahead.
Okay. I mean, I could see that, definitely. And I would agree with that. I see there's a question posted in the chat. Is it worth merit, Rose?
Let's see. It's host's definition of corruption. When a service intended for good is used but is utilized selfishly, or the bastardization arc, i.e., the opposite of the redemption arc.
Mhm.
Oh, I recognize that term.
Storytelling.
Huh?
It's like a storytelling kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a quick little term for storytelling to give people an idea of what the heck they're talking about.
Sure. Okay. That's an interesting definition for sure. Okay, do we have any pictures or anything like that that we were planning on using?
Yeah, for this particular question, we have one which I think almost anyone who has any sort of movie knowledge will recognize. And that would be dun 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 Yesu. If this one thing will work. Come on. Why is it not? Dun 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 Yesu.
I'm gonna go with Darth Vader. The Chosen One! But you are the Chosen One! Yeah, that's some
But
serious
yeah,
energy.
it's like one of those classic ones, I believe. At least in storytelling wise.
Okay, I mean that's a pretty modern take on classic, but all right. I mean, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
I mean, we
one.
call some of the new modern Disney's classics, so.
I think it's just more relatable, generally speaking, to our audience, so it's an easy one to reference.
Yeah, I'll throw a bone there. That makes sense. Absolutely.
Alright.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a great picture, though. It definitely shows corruption, though. I mean, come on, Darth Vader, 100%. Little kid in the sand, hated sand, you know, went into like a pod racing thing, won his freedom, went to go train with a bunch of Jedi. Best Jedi got killed, so he got trained by a sort of Jedi. You will be a Jedi. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What did I say? Anakin, why? Anyways, alright. I have a lot of emotions tied to this.
Alright. You got any more to say about this question?
No. I mean, honestly, like, I think that question is pretty straightforward. I mean, corruption has existed for pretty much as long as humans have been around. I think the only difference between corruption from probably in the early days is the consequences and its overall impact. I mean, I think someone who is very corrupt today can make a very large impact in a huge negative way. And I think that that particular thing is the thing that has really changed. Because, I mean, yeah, someone corrupted, you know, very in the distant past, maybe he hurt a village. But one guy could hurt the whole world with their corruption. So, I mean, does anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Host has a comment about Skywalker.
Okay, all right, let's hear it.
Skywalker's always been a little bit of twat.
How dare you? How dare you? No, I'm just messing with you. It's fine. I mean, honestly, yeah, I'll give you that. Like, I was not sold on little kid Anakin. Honestly, it wasn't until Anakin like killed all the little children on his way to the dark side I was like, yeah, Anakin. I'm very much in favor of Anakin as the dark side.
Jesus. Alright. Do we want to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Alright. How has corruption affected people over time?
Okay, we're gonna give this one to Aaron.
Okay. Well, I think one of the first obvious ways is, financially. Basically, the people above don't necessarily care about the people that they're governing for, and they put them in bad situations with, like, say, healthcare or other things, to where they don't want to help the people out, and it just makes their overall living situation not great.
Okay. I mean, I can agree to that to some extent, but I think that there's probably like a lot of things that are involving in those particular decisions, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah, but this is just a general question, and I'm giving you kind of a general answer.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough. Fair enough. What do you think, Rose?
For me, it's it's been in the system for so long that some people kind of take it as a norm sometimes, and that's really not the greatest.
Yeah, definitely not
Like,
good.
some people, when they have slights or injustices done against them, there are some people who don't even try to fix it because they know the system's not going to work for them, despite the sole or original purpose was supposed to help them to begin with. But it's been changed and corrupted enough over time to where it's the new normal to not do anything, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I definitely could see that.
Yeah, it just kind of festers. Like, do you mind if I go ahead and show this one picture?
Yeah, go ahead, show the picture real quick.
Yeah, so it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's like a rotten piece of fruit. You've got an apple, originally was fine, but if something corrupts the tree or starts like eating away at it, it starts getting rotten and moldy, and it'll just keep going like that until it finally falls off. But who knows, it might also infect others and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Or, this little picture of it just snuck in and continued. It's an adorable little cartoon version, but
I mean, yeah, there's lots of problems with that one, though.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. I mean, I think corruption kind of has evolved quite a bit as people have evolved when it comes to the way in which people interact. I mean, I think corruption kind of like, it's all about following the power. So, like, if, we think about how power was established, you originally had kind of like kingdoms. And so you had a corrupting force, say like some sort of like advisor comes into the kingdom and starts to kind of manipulate perhaps like the king or whoever is in charge in that particular structure, and starts to take advantage, and that corruption, that taking advantage, is going to create a kind of like a trickling effect of damaging other people as those particular actions kind of have consequences that pave the way through. And a great example of this kind of thing that happened in the past has to do with like the Catholic Church, and the way in which its entire structure kind of like works. So like it's been around, I mean, for a very long time, and there's lots and lots and lots of examples over the history of essentially as communities started to get, essentially get a stranglehold of power in those particular groupings. You start seeing, people getting taken advantage of, people being punished or mistreated, and so it's like those particular things is, in my mind, a corrupting element. I mean, like, is that something that you guys might agree with or no?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah. There's like, back to the original definition, if they're abusing their power for something that should have been good in the first place, yeah, there's definitely a corruption element to it.
It just makes me sad in general. Like, it exists. I don't want it to exist, but it's existed longer than I've been alive and longer than my family's been alive. It's just
Yeah.
It's just no good.
Yeah, corruption is just one of those just nasty things. It's like a dirty little secret, but it's not really a secret. It's like everyone knows about it, but they don't want to talk about it because it's ugly. I also think that corruption's kind of spread. I think that definitely as certain cultural influences have kind of like, taken over certain parts of the world, we see corruption that's unique to certain areas start to come over. Like, an example is kind of like Western culture. There are places in the world today where Western culture has kind of like been adopted by other cultures because they either idolize the American dream or they just like certain goods. And because those companies have come into those particular communities, they've begun to kind of manipulate those communities a little bit. And I would suggest, or even say in a strong way, that those are all corrupting elements. Like when a McDonald's, is in like, I think it was like, was it Beijing or something like that? Like that's a bit strange then. Or like or KFC, how KFC's kind of been like used in Japan. Like there's whole things have changed because of these things happening, and like they've only been around for like 50, 60 years. I mean, I think KFC's started in the late 60s or something like that, so it's not been around that long, and yet to have that kind of an impact on an entire country, it's like, whoa. So I would say that's a corrupting element. Whether people agree with me or not, I choose to believe this.
Since you've gone ahead and mentioned other countries, I'm going to skip around to this one question that's specifically dealing with international corruption.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So, this is actually supposed to be question 7, but you know what? You can skip around questions on tests. Well, as long as it's not an ordered test, so whatever. Do other parts of the world experience more or less corruption compared to countries in the West like the USA?
Ooh.
So you kind of went into a little bit of it about, mentioning what stuff we've got from the US and how it's essentially moved into other countries.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, what I'm going to say to this is that I think that every part of the world that has people who are in power who want to hold on to that power and want to manipulate the masses in some way, shape, or form are probably equally corrupt, because I think at the end of the day, there's going to be some money that's going to be changing hands, or some resource that's changing hands, and I think that inherently lends itself to bribery, and I think obviously bribery would be a form of corruption, and so to me I think it's very likely that any country that interacts with any other country that would be considered, on par or similar or familiar with or associated with any Western culture, is probably going to be equal to or comparable at the very least to the corruption you see in the States. And I think there are instances of even more corruption. Like I can think of a couple countries in Africa that got support from one government or another, and they used that to get a stranglehold over the people, and definitely were corrupted by the particular assistance. So. Which one do you guys want to take a stab at it?
Well, I think, at least for what you just said, I don't think it's that they are corrupted by the assistance. I think they took the assistance and corrupted it itself, because they took advantage of the fact that they got helped, and then they turned it into a situation that just benefited them and not everyone else like it was intended.
Okay, yeah, I could agree to that to some extent. That's a way to look at it that I hadn't quite 100% considered. But yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So... Oh. No, host. Let me try and give some semblance of an answer from my point of view before I get into host's comment here.
Sure.
Let's see. So, more or less, like you've mentioned before, it's kind of, as long as you're interacting with some sort of people, civilization, society, there's going to be some amount of corruption in either case. It's just like the differences may amount depending on what type of scenario it is. And like Aaron's mentioned, people can absolutely take advantage of the fact that they're being helped and use it for more selfish reasons. And on the other scope of things, you can absolutely have people that are only helping others so that they can gain something from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of who's doing what, who's interacted with whom. And there's a bunch of scenarios, so I can't say definitively who's experienced more or less corruption, because different scopes of people, different scopes of problems, and a different wide variety of consequences available to them.
I have something to say after you say something about a host's comment.
Okay. So, host comment. Hey, Kyle, welcome back.
Hey, Kyle.
Host comment, corruption is a form of innovation. Please change my mind, please. I think we might actually get into that with another question we have. It was the original 4th question, but I decided to skip around to this one, so I think we might get to that later.
Yeah, we may change your mind.
Kyle, I imagine a lot of problems with measuring corruption is that we can ask if the organization measuring corruption is itself corrupt. Ooh. Ooh, gosh, it sounds
okay,
like...
so first of all, like to that particular statement, I just want to make sure we understand. We don't live in a perfect world, so yes, I think inherently anybody who's doing any sort of judging at some level is corrupt. I know I'm corrupt. I also think that every person in this world in some way, shape, or form is corrupt in some minor ways. Being corrupt isn't necessarily always going to be a bad thing, just that's also kind of an important thing, because corruption often is led to this notion that you automatically it's associated with bad things. But being corrupt, all it really does technically mean is that the initial response has to be something negative, but sometimes negative reactions can cause positive reactions. So something negative or bad at first can turn good.
Speaking of which, if we go back to the original question 4 here.
Okay, but damn it, I wasn't done.
Okay.
Oh well.
Go on.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say this. When it comes to corruption based upon other countries in the world, I think that the main thing that matters is population size and also power of influence. So, like, if a country has a large GDP, all right, and there's a large population that's under that particular thing, which kind of most countries kind of goes hand in hand in that particular kind of situation, then those particular areas I think are more likely to be more corrupted because there's more opportunity for that to happen. And the reason why there's more opportunity, obviously, is because there's more people. And also, typically, countries that have a lot more people typically have more desire to be in control and kind of, point fingers, which is kind of why I feel like the areas of the country that are, areas of the world that have country structures that are dictatorship-like, or perhaps not Republican, or not Democratic Republic kind of situation. Sorry, not Republican, Democratic Republic, or things along those particular lines. You start to see certain trends in their political structure that tends to creep towards more control and less towards freedom of an individual. At least that's my observations. I mean, there's definitely examples on both sides that aren't quite, but I think there's a lot more examples of what I'm saying than not. And do you guys agree to that, or is that something that I think I'm like alone in thinking?
Well, at least in my particular aspect, I think that, when any particular country's rulers are corrupt, I feel like it's the people, the direct people's jobs who are living there to kind of try to at least combat the corruption somehow or whatever, right? And then maybe some outside sources could potentially help, but overall the main country should be trying to get their stuff in order.
Is that true in all cases, you think, or is it more like a case-by-case scenario?
Well, because the thing is, everyone views corruption differently.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on your viewpoint in each country, it kind of differs a little bit, but I feel like everyone should fight the corruption to make their best living situation.
I mean, like in the current situations going on in the Middle East, like with all the various warfare and stuff that's been going on there, do you think that there's a corrupting element that's existing in that area that's causing the perpetual wars, and it's the responsibility of those people to fight their own wars? Or do you have a different take on something like that?
Well, so it's pretty much like this. It's like there's only so much that people can do after a certain point. That's why I said sometimes other sources can help.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you can fight it yourself, then you should, but also other people should realize that if someone needs help, lending a hand to make the world a better place should be a high priority.
Sure. I mean, I can see that, but I mean, it kind of sounded like from your previous comment that you were kind of suggesting that that people are more or less responsible for potentially overthrowing or changing the particular political structure that would overthrow the corrupting force. And I just was kind of curious when it comes to certain situations if it's a case-by-case scenario or if it's just a universal thing that you kind of think.
Yeah, it absolutely is case by case, because that's just how life is in general. So, like, if you have one thing that's happening, you can't handle it the same way every time. And honestly, it's just, it needs to, everyone needs to help out in whatever way they can.
Sure. Rose, what do you think about this?
Jeez, that was a lot of words. I'm like, hold on, what did you just say? Okay, so for the most part, I got, like, it was a debate about when a country is corrupted, is it kind of the job of the people versus, like, whether they get inside help or not?
Well, no, it was more like if he was saying something about essentially how people who are experiencing corruption,
Mhm.
they are responsible in some level to either overthrow or deal with the particular political or, to say, dictatorship or whoever the hell it is in
Yeah.
charge of doing this. Is it those people's responsibility to overthrow that individual? And I said, is it a case-by-case scenario, or is it like a universal thing? Because there are certain countries in the Middle East that have been in a war of some sort for an extremely long period of time. And if that's the particular case, is there a corrupting element to that particular scenario? And if so, is it the people's fault that they can't do that much or aren't in the position to do that much? Or is it more like a case-by-case scenario where these people are not able to do this, so we're going to jump in and do this? That's why I asked him that. Does that make sense? Or am
Yes.
or did I say too fast?
I'd say, in my opinion, it's a case-by-case thing, because there are some people who do have the power to do something, so they should act.
Mhm.
Like Aaron mentioned before, so they should act, but sometimes they don't, so it's definitely on them if they choose not to, and there's
Sure.
like nothing for them to lose if they act. That's like one extreme case. And then you've got those people who are in a corrupted situation, who are suffering from it, but they can't actually do anything about it. So they can still like do a couple of things, but the scope of how different and how much it'll actually change things is wildly different. So I have to give them a little less blame for that sort of thing. Because I know if there was a chance for me to act, but it had some serious consequences for myself or those I loved and cared about,
Mhm.
I'd rather choose to keep my family safe even if I hate what's going on.
Hmm.
So some people are in those situations. So for me, it's highly a case-by-case scenario, because sometimes you have the power and you can do something, and then there are sometimes you don't have the power, or even if you do, it'll come at severe consequences for not just you. So it's a kind of a, if you have the power, do you actually do something about it? And if you do, what are the consequences of doing such things? You might get rid of the corruption, but what are the costs of doing that? Because like you've mentioned, countries that have been in war for so freaking long, if they've been in war for such a long time, what's going to happen when it finally ends? Are they going to like finally be at peace, or are they going to be heck confused because it's what they've known for so long?
Okay, but just because someone knows nothing but war for pretty much their entire lives, are you saying that that is inherently corrupt then, and that they have no way of getting around that, and so they're just forced to have this cycle of violence over and over again?
It's not that they're inherently, it's just a matter of, like I mentioned before, sometimes you get so used to the thing that once it's finally gone, it's kind of a question of where do we go from here, and it's highly depending on what they've done throughout the entirety of the corruption. Sometimes people might even be confused. It's like, is this actually correct, or are we going to make things worse if we don't continue the way we've been doing? It's kind of it's a bad scenario. So some people even are like the devil you know or the devil you don't know type of scenario, and that's highly case by case, because there are some people who will absolutely take the chance to take on the new devil, the new challenges, the new consequences, knowing nothing about what their actions will do. And then there are some people who will continue the cycle because they know that's despite how violent or disruptive or chaotic it might be, maybe they're not willing to take that chance. I don't think that answered anything on my end.
No, I kind of felt like it kind of was going a little bit in a circle, to be honest. I don't, not to be mean, I don't...
Like, the overall answer was it's heavily case-by-case scenario,
Yeah.
because of there's so many factors involved.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, and I agree with that I think entirely, honestly. That's exactly how I feel about it. And I would ask this to the chat and anybody who's watching, if you guys want to send a question in the comments below or send us a message via Twitter or contact us at wickedparley@gmail.com. What are your thoughts on this particular question? We'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question.
Yeah, back to number 4.
All right. Let's go back to what host was wanting, right?
Yeah. Has corruption ever had a positive effect in the world?
Yes. Very much so, yes, for me, yes. Here's what I'm going to say, all right? There are parts of the world that are not considered industrialized, that receive aid from various governments around the world. A lot of these countries are in places that would be considered the third world or something like that, you know. And what ends up happening a lot of times is that certain, you know, people in position of power in these governments receive the aid and they kind of like just basically sit on it and collect as much of it as they possibly can without trying to help the people. This has a benefit of when these particular individuals do eventually get toppled over, the economy that would normally be wrecked by the toppling of a government isn't actually wrecked and instead sees a massive surplus and the distribution of resources usually more evenly. And that's what would be an example of a positive effect of corruption. Because, you know, it's not technically the corruption per se, but it's like the causal effect of what happens after corruption that I think can sometimes be good. And then there's other examples too, but I'd like to hear what you guys think. So whichever one of you guys wants to take it, the question, Aaron or Rose.
I guess I'll go first. So pretty much like the way I see it is if there's no problems in the world, nothing ever gets better. So generally speaking, if someone's doing something and it causes something to happen, generally people will want to make it better or they'll realize something is wrong. And while the problem itself was not really a great thing, it shows that people need to at least generally work together for something.
Okay. And when it comes to like corruption and everything that's related to, I guess, I don't know, you know what, we're ignore what I said. I'll jump back to it once I've heard Rose's response.
Goodness gracious. Let's see, has corruption ever had a positive effect in the world? Like Aaron's mentioned, you kind of can't have improvement if something bad doesn't happen first, or like even if it's just an improvement on something, that doesn't necessarily mean that something bad has to happen first. But if something bad does necessarily happen, it definitely draws attention to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of if there's not much attention thrown to it, it'll take a bit longer for something to make a difference. But if something like is obviously bad and you want to change it grabs a lot of attention, and sometimes bringing attention to the thing is what you need in order to start making large changes to the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, while corruption is quite the annoyance and it's not exactly positive in the very beginning, if it's changed over time, that's kind of what leads to the positive effect, even if it takes quite a long time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that entirely. I mean, in my particular thought process is that if you don't have corruption in the world, then how do you recognize something's good? I mean, if anything else, I mean, it's kind of like when people say, I never want bad things to happen. Well, then how would you ever know if good things happen? You know, you have nothing to measure your experience by. And I also see there's a couple of messages in the chat. You want to go ahead and read them up?
Yeah, sure. Host, the comment that's specifically for this one is with Host. I agree with Aaron. Corruption can be a catalyst for change, and change is neither good nor bad.
So that's good. That seems like everyone seems to be on the same page with this particular one. What was the other?
I don't think we've unfortunately changed your mind about corruption being a form of innovation, but... Kyle!
I mean, to be fair, I agree with him on that. I mean, I definitely like a cold time in the backyard. That is a very nice thing.
All right, so go ahead and read the question, though.
So, The one for the last one, where I went off on my tangent that seemed to be going around in circles, Kyle put it nicely. They've believed that I was trying to point out that corruption has a function in an environment, and we should ask what will happen when the environment changes.
Okay, well, see, I like, I don't know how you pulled that from what she was saying, to be honest. I mean, I think you're making a lot of leaps there based off what she's saying. But
it makes sense to me, granted I was the one that was talking.
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely, I mean, like, I see where the train of thought was going. I just don't necessarily see how you would have gathered that 100% from the context of the words in which she actually said.
Fair.
But I understand, that particular thing is definitely a thing. But I do think it's important to also recognize that just because the environment particularly changes doesn't mean that the nature of people is going to change all that much. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's resources in the world suddenly get reduced by some giant number, you can 100% guarantee that countries will go to war for those resources.
Oh, hard, yeah.
And so that's an example of the environment changing, but the motive and the action that people do aren't. Because at the end of the day, no matter how noble someone says they are, at the end of the day, we're all very much ruled by very primitive thinking and very primitive emotions. And I don't think any one person can ever say, I have not been angry at something that happened, and I didn't have a reaction that was in direct response to that anger. And I think that that's just a simple way of looking at this. And so I think corruption is a much more complex problem, but its complexity hides or misleads its simplicity in some ways. And so that's the thing that I think is important to take away from all of that. And so, like, when you think about what she was saying in the context of it changing, I think keep in mind that people are simple, and the motives that are behind people are usually simple, even if the problems are complex. So, anyways, and I also see there's a whole bunch of other questions. So let's respond. I'll pick two more, and then we're moving on.
I feel like you went around in your own circle there.
I sort of did, but I explained myself, so.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
Doesn't
biased.
change the fact that there is a circle.
Yeah, I'm not defending it. I'm just making a statement. You can blindly accept it or not. Okay.
Keep going around circles, man.
Hey, you know what? I will walk that circle. I will run that circle.
With your back right now?
That's a good point. Hey, we're not talking about my back right now.
Uh-huh.
People in the chat don't need to know I'm dying over here.
We're all dying, that's a matter of fact.
Hey, I'm dying at a faster rate, though.
Alright. Kyle. Okay, host. Yeah, they mentioned on the contrary. We kind of reinforced the idea that corruption is innovation.
No, I disagree. It's not an innovation.
But we've kind of all agreed that it is a form of change, and you usually have, and innovation is typically linked to change.
No, I disagree with that entirely. Like, I'm saying corruption is a basic it's linked to anything that you consider a structure. That it goes back as far back as far. It's inherently part of the human identity. A corruption or a corrupting force is an inherent property of all humans. And so I don't think it's an innovation. I think it's a constant. It's always been around. And so you can't be innovating a constant. It's like you're not taking the words happy and being like, we're going to make happy different. I mean, like, that's just not a thing. People have tried and failed all the damn time. Like that, I just that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's an inherent property of one of the aspects of what humanity is. And so it's not an evolving thing. It's not a behavior that's going to change. It's not an environment factor. It's a property of essentially a group of humans.
Yeah, I would just like to put one thing towards host comment. It's like you said earlier, host. It's a catalyst for change, and the thing is, catalysts are usually what inspire change. So, it's not that corruption itself is innovation, but it leads to it.
Well
Yeah,
said.
if we take all the comments into consideration, it's just we've been leaving out words. in the comments. Because it's like the first question was corruption is a form of innovation. Then later it was like corruption is a type of change, and that change, it's a catalyst for change. And then in the latest comment, it just went corruption is innovation, and I'm like, we're taking things a lot literally now.
Yeah, it's like we're gonna go from abstract to quite literally like this is this. Yeah.
But Kyle brings up an interesting one. I think it's
Is this the second one? Is this the second one?
Yeah.
All right, Kyle.
I think it's a more interesting question to ask if corruption is necessary.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is. I'm just gonna be like 100%. Yes, it is. And I think it's because it's an inherent property to get things motivated. You are going to use corruption more often than not to get something done. Whether it's a good or bad thing, it's something is going to get done. And I think that that's always going to be inherently valuable in any group setting, in any group situation. And valuable in multiple ways. Because like I had explained before, like if someone gathers a bunch of resources and uses corruption to manipulate the others to gather those resources, and then that person gets toppled over, and those resources have now been stockpiled for whatever the next group that comes in, hopefully a better group than the one that was there before. Okay, I don't need to breathe, okay? You need to relax. Okay, Rose. You need to
I am
relax.
never relaxed, and
You
you
need to
told
relax.
me earlier to make sure you knew how to breathe.
Hey, am I talking too fast? Is someone in the chat not able to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? No, serious. Understand the words coming out of my mouth.
Okay, not with that accent.
I know. It's terrible. But
But you definitely get excited and start talking faster than normal.
yeah, of course I get excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm on to something that I definitely understand.
This is a passionate topic, okay?
It is
There are a lot
passionate.
of things to be said about this.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, it's so passionate. I had to bring on a guest to talk about it.
Yeah, I guess it's not talking.
Very
a little
biased
bit.
towards this topic over others.
Yeah, no, seriously. Speak up, man. Speak up. Make it a little louder.
Hmm?
I was talking to Aaron. He needs to speak up. Be a little louder.
You want me to be louder?
Yeah,
Oh,
be
dear.
louder. That's right. Be louder. Not like these people care, anyways. We're probably in the background. They're probably playing a video game, just hearing our
Hey,
goofy conversation.
Obviously, the people who are commenting care, and you should give the viewers credit who care.
You know what? That's right. I give credit to host and Kyle.
Well, yeah, if you don't give credit to your viewers, they're not going to feel appreciated, and they won't want to watch your stream.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and you know how I show my appreciation?
Oh dear.
I'll show you how I show my appreciation. Next question.
Yeah, getting on with the
Let's say
subject.
bring on the cat.
Yeah, that's
Say
right.
bring on the cat, you little.
Oh, so there's a cat? Oh, yeah. Show the image.
Show the cat. I mean, that's not the image of the cat.
Oh, okay, never mind. Show the image of the actual people. The ones that matter.
No. Jesus Christ.
Hey, I'm not being racist. I'm being honest. They matter. These people definitely matter.
Yeah, so it's just like, this is a picture of a, let's see, specifically the image is labeled, students in the Democratic Republic of the Congo march against corruption in education and impunity. So, yeah, corruption's kind of everywhere and in everything.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the educational system around the world honestly needs to be reformed. I can't wait till we talk about that episode. That's going to be a good episode when we go over that. I really will, and that's not even sarcasm. That's like legitimately, like, on just as a brief snippet. I mean, how many people get into, let's say, like one of the prestigious universities by paying an exorbitant amount of money or buying a building or something crazy? Like, it happens a lot. I mean, wasn't there like a scandal a couple of years ago with like some famous people doing some trickery to get their kids into school or something?
More than likely, if you can think it probably exists somewhere.
Okay, we're not going down 4chan roads though. No 4chan.
What the?
Who knows? Reality is kind of stranger than fiction in quite a number of areas.
That's fair. What? You got something to say, Aaron? I heard a what the fuck. Got something to say?
Why? Yeah. What's the point of that comment? That's weird, dude.
Oh, it's
Tell me not to say weird stuff. And you
Hey,
say
hey,
weird
hey, hey,
stuff.
hey, hey. I told you not to say weird shit because the weird shit is meant for me to say. Ow. I hit
Oh,
myself.
okay.
Okay.
I feel like you may be suffering from corruption. You're abusing your
Hey,
power.
I already said at the beginning of this thing that I was corrupt. I didn't even deny it. I'm just like, yeah, no, absolutely, I'm 100% corrupt. I am a corruptible person. If someone gives me enough money, I will likely do some pretty heinous things.
All right,
Oh my God, come on!
moving on.
Of course, now we're moving on. I thought we were bringing a quality show here. I thought we were going to use some entertainment.
Now it's just gotten into petty arguments.
It's not a
And I'm
petty
all for
argument.
it.
It
And I'm
means a
all
lot to me. It means
I am
so
all
much
for
to
a
me.
cat fight. I am all for a cat fight, but for when I do not have my popcorn.
First of all, I ain't even got my paws on. I'm just like...
Oh, come on. You got
Damn.
nails for days.
Hey, well, first of all, I have a broken nail.
We
Painful.
still need to take care of that. All right.
Hey, whoa,
Number
whoa,
five.
wait, no, you ain't filing this.
Up, up, up.
Ah.
Let's get back to the topic. Oh my
So
goodness.
number
Hey,
5.
shh. Guest.
Hey, I can have my opinion. I'm gonna speak out. Okay.
All right, clearly you have your opinion. Fine.
I'm fighting against the corruption.
See, she even agrees with me.
No,
Okay.
it's just I want to get to the next
All
question.
right, fine. Let's get to the question.
Who bears the most responsibility when a corruption scandal happens? The person being corrupted or the person doing the corrupting?
Aaron's corrupted. Hey, he's the
Oh,
one who's responsible.
gosh. You just mentioned that everybody's
Aaron's
inherently
responsible.
in some way.
100%. He's responsible. 100%.
See, this is his host. This is his host privilege, blaming me. This is corruption. 100%.
Oh, why are you talking about privilege? You're talking about the wrong episode, buddy. You're the wrong episode.
Privilege is probably
People just look away.
one thing that I don't want to talk about. So
Well, I think he's got like a shit ton of euros.
Just look away. People just look away.
Yeah, just smile and nod, honestly, yeah, no, I think the answer to this question, in all seriousness, is yeah, no, I think the responsibility of corruption is probably bared on both people, and I think that it's at varying levels. It's kind of like the person who's being abused or being taken advantage of. In some ways, who is being, corrupted on, has the responsibility to speak up and do something about it. But I don't think they're like 100%. If I was going to put it in percentage-wise, I'd say like 35% on the one who is being taken advantage of or, corrupted of sorts. And then the person who is doing the manipulation or the taking, who is the corrupter, I think probably bears 65 to 70% of responsibility. At least that's my take on it. Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, based on how the question was worded, I think it's pretty much clear that there is responsibility on both parts. But yeah, I can definitely agree that the one doing the corrupting is the more responsible out of the two, because the one who's being corrupted, they might not know the essential reasonings for why the person trying to corrupt them is doing what they're doing. They might be clueless, they might be oblivious, or they might they have the responsibility to try and fight it, but sometimes just people are very clueless about what the heck's going on in life. I know I am in several aspects of my life.
So hold on a second. You've not seen Star Wars?
I mean, no.
I mean, you've never. Well, hold on a second. Wait. I don't want to start throwing out fighting words now. You've seen Episode 3, right?
No.
Oh my God.
I told you for the nth time.
I'm telling you right now. Friday comes around. Watch it. Star Wars Episode 3.
We barely have time to do anything.
It's gonna be fine. We're gonna do it. I don't even care. We're watching it. It means a lot. Know this, people out there. She's watching this. She's gonna see corruption on camera. And and it's not the corruption you guys are thinking either. It's the corruption of my soul.
Okay.
okay.
It's the corruption of my soul. They took something so great and ruined it. Damn you, prequels! Alright, sorry. Alright, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm done talking about Star Wars right now. I'm sorry.
Do you need a break?
Do I? Maybe I need a timeout. Is what I need. Jesus.
I feel like me being on the show is not helping you in any way, Justin. I feel like I get you excited.
No, what? No, we're just talking. We're talking about something that I actually wanted to really talk about in a No, my hair's all fucked up right now. Damn you, freaking headset. We'll have to talk to the
Yeah.
financier guy.
Like,
The financier
depending
guy.
on the situation, some people are absolutely clueless until it's like too late, and that's when they're able to start fighting back.
Mhm.
But like for the beginning bit of it, some people just might not realize what's happening. So for the most part, in my opinion, a lot of it is on the one doing their corrupting because they kind of know what they're doing.
Sure, okay, that makes sense. And that is being like taken advantage of bears no responsibility whatsoever.
So I said they bear some responsibility.
All right, throw a percentage then. Give us like a percentage of how much it is, like kind of how I did.
I'd say anywhere between like, depending on the time frame, 15 to 30.
15 to 30%, really?
Depending on the time frame, because it's like if you're oblivious, you're kind of oblivious, and it's just like very minimal. But if it's like if it just keeps going, you're a little more. And it's a whole mess, and percentages are really weird.
All right, Aaron, what do you
Hey,
think?
Matthew.
Yeah, so I think it's more like, so there is a certain amount of responsibility on the person who has been the one corrupting, but the thing is, if they're the ones corrupting, they like once the people point out the fact that there's something wrong, they need to be able to change, like, well, not need to, but they should be able to change what they're doing. So I feel like it's more responsibility on the people to change their corruption because they're the ones who technically define what the corruption is.
Fair. We were talking about.
I don't know if I agree with that because like let's take a little bit of Rose for instance, right? Like what she said, like if you're completely oblivious, right? Then how is it fair or how is it possible for that person to even be able to do anything about the corruption if they're completely oblivious?
Well, the simple answer to that is people who aren't oblivious need to spread information as much as possible.
Which
just
is
because
fine.
you're ignorant doesn't mean it's not your fault, kind of thing.
Okay.
You know, if something is happening and you don't know, obviously there's a point where you don't know, so you can't do anything. But that's the whole point of spreading information about corruption, so that way people can actually do something about it. Because if no one spreads information and doesn't get anything done, then the corruption is just going to keep happening.
Okay. All right. I will agree with that to an extent. Like the only thing here's the thing I like. I like the part about how you're saying other people should take the responsibility to kind of help and like aid that particular individual by being able to identify that and kind of like get them out of that circle. But at the same time, I kind of think that like being culpable to certain things, I think is kind of inherently flawed. To what degree in which I agree with that, I'm not sure yet. Like I haven't made my mind up about it yet, but like I definitely feel like it is. I'm not 100% with you on that whole thing, but there's enough of it for me. Like yeah, okay. And hi, Matt.
Oh, he's got his opinions already.
Being corrupted isn't the victim's fault. I feel like there's like a big statement that says stop blaming the victim. Stop blaming the victim. I'm just like.
Well, to be fair, I never said it was the victim's fault.
Oh no, I know. I definitely like kind of think that just a little bit. Like I'm not entirely sure. Like I kind of feel like maybe it kind of is a little bit. Just a little bit.
Well, if the thing is, if it is the victim's fault, then it's even more so their responsibility to change it.
Okay, see, the responsibility part's the part that I kind of have problems with. Bearing responsibility means that you're taking account of whatever's happening. How can you do it in past tense?
Well, that's the thing, man. If you're pointing out the fact that it's the victim's fault for the corruption that's happening, then from that point of view, they should be the one to change it. That's why I'm saying if you are the person who is the victim and something is happening to you, from my point of view, you should speak out against it in whatever way you can to change that corruption. Because if there is corruption and there is a problem, whether it be good or bad or bias or whatever, you need to change it. That's the thing. That's the whole point. You identified it as corruption, so you need to change it.
Okay. In that particular way, I kind of like I can agree with it to some extent here and that after the fact, like especially considering the context of everything. Okay. It sounded like you wanted to say something, Rose. What was the thing you wanted to say?
Sorry, I just read the next comment.
Okay, all right. What was the next comment?
It was just one word. Excuses. From
Excuses.
Matthew.
Okay,
It's just
all right.
like just whenever I read that word, it immediately makes me think of that one meme. It's just like some haughty person is just like, excuses, how dare type of scenario, and it just makes
How
me laugh.
dare you?
Some people are slime. They definitely can be.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Okay then. All right. Let's go ahead, and if no one else has anything more to say about question 5, let's jump to the next question.
Do you happen to have any ideas or thoughts about how to stop or slow down the process of corruption in the world? I think Aaron might have gone into it a little bit when he mentioned just like, spreading the information, pointing it out, and letting people not be ignorant of the entire process.
Okay. Aaron, would you like to take a stab at this question?
Yeah, honestly, so there's not, just for me personally, I think that the only the thing you can do is pretty much, like I said, spread the information and basically act upon that information you have to make a decision to potentially combat whatever is happening. There's not really a specific thing I have in mind because it is generally case to case with corruption. So I think that it's mostly you have to take everything with a grain of salt, basically.
Okay.
Fair.
And Rose, what are your thoughts?
Most of mine is also more information based because if people are uninformed, they can't really make proper decisions, or if they do make decisions, they could potentially be the quite wrong ones, depending on the situation you find yourself in.
What kind of like wrong decisions do you think kind of like point down to this particular road?
Essentially, kind of one of the more obvious ones, at least in my opinion, is essentially letting it go for as long as it have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if people can think they get away with it, then those people, sometimes they stop, sometimes they just keep going to see how much they can push and how far until it finally snaps back at them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do that push system, and if people keep allowing it to happen, it's just going to get worse and worse until it finally builds to the point of almost no return, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So getting the information out there, not letting it go as long as it has, depending on the type of corruption, because there are some forms of corruption that are just so long in the making that it's unfortunate. But like, just, I guess, for the people, kind of just being informed, try not to let injustices happen for as long as they have. Keeping informed is the more important bit, in my opinion, because it's something that pretty much anybody can do.
Okay, so being informed and being kind of active and being able to say and do things to stop minor points and then stop it before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, as active as is safe for you, at least, because no point in getting hurt, because if you get hurt, there's a point you can't continue. So.
Okay. All right, like me personally, when it comes down to this, I think that there is a couple of ways in which you could theoretically slow it down. I think, I mean, although it's kind of a radical, probably unrealistic, let's face it, entirely unrealistic. You basically have to completely dismantle the entire political power structures of all global governments around the world, and essentially group them into smaller grouping communities of, probably less than 20 people, and have those particular individual subgroups be the ones that are in charge of basically their little pod of individuals. And then in that way you would slow down the process of corruption, because it would take so long for corruption to reach every single group that it would disseminate across a greater range. That would be my way of how you go about slowing it down. I don't think stopping it is really a thing, because like as I kind of said before, it is, in my particular opinion, a fundamental characteristic of human interactions. I mean, it's something that is inherently going to creep up because it's one of the many ways in which humans problem solve. And it is one of the unfortunate things. It's a negative, but I think that inherently it's something that is just something we do, and there is no getting rid of it entirely. It's not like you can just go saw off your leg and still be able to walk without like some sort of prosthetic, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like in my particular opinion, that's the reason why you can't actually stop it, but I think you could definitely slow it down because by dividing up the ability to actually enact certain things and you take away the larger power structures, it becomes a lot more difficult to actually be able to do it. So those are my thoughts on that particular thing. I see several things being stated. Do you want to pick and choose what's there, or do you just want to read them?
Yeah,
all?
we've got 3. We've got one that's kind of a question, and then 2 of them are kind of like comments/questions.
Okay, and also before we jump into those, just real quick, Aaron, did you have anything to say to what I had said?
No, not particularly. I don't think you can really get rid of corruption. All you can really do is slow it down because it's pretty much, I mean, this might be not necessarily great to say, but I feel like it's a necessary force.
Okay.
Yeah. As unfortunate as it is.
Yeah.
So I'll go in order of when they were sent.
Okay.
For Matthew, this was more about the responsibility in being informed.
Okay.
Would you tell a student that he or she should know more than the teacher because the one that knows more is given responsibility in choosing to learn? It's privilege that not everyone is granted.
Okay. Watch our privilege episode, first of all. That might address the question a little bit better because we do have a limited amount of time. But I would say that inherently the roles between a student and teacher are different, and the expectations of those particular roles are different, and so I'm having a hard time understanding how corruption plays a role in those particular circumstances. So if you could elaborate at a future point, particularly an email, that would be great. But yeah, I think I think it's a different thing because they're just two different things. But I don't think that it's the responsibility of the student to know more than the teacher. I think it's the goal of a student to eventually learn as much as the teacher knows about the given subject they're attempting to study. So what's the next question? Actually, first, before I do anything, does anyone want to respond to that? Do you guys think that I'm right about that, or what do you guys think?
Yeah, so pretty much the only thing I would say is this, like when it comes to a student and a teacher situation, that's not really the same as when I was saying people should be informed about, what's going on. And the thing is, if something bad is happening and someone knows about it, speaking out about it is at least the minimal thing they can do, so that way people who don't know can at least get an opinion on it.
Okay. I also see that he said it was a metaphor. Okay.
I get that.
Yeah.
Alright.
All right, next question.
Yeah, sure. So this one, the next 2 are from Kyle. Many times people give into corruption due to poverty, i.e. bribery. Cutting down in global poverty might help, and also open source helps to decrease
Hold on. Let's talk about that first one first, because that's going to be a little bit of a longer response in my mind. Okay. So first of all, global poverty, if you were to give every single person in the entire world enough money to be happy, I don't think it would get rid of corruption at all. Period. I don't think that that's actually going to be a thing. And I think the reason why we know that is because there have been studies that have looked at the difference between people who make about $80,000 a year and people who make $1 million or multi-million, and their inherent value of happiness doesn't seem to increase beyond a certain point. And I think that point is being able to pay all your bills, live comfortably, and then have a little bit of extra cushion to kind of do certain things. seems to be where people become happy, and they don't get any better than that. And so I don't think that by making everyone's happiness level kind of reach to a certain point, you're going to get rid of corruption. I think if anything, what you might actually find is that if the entire world gets to a certain point, or a large portion of it gets to an equal footing, you'll lose either the importance or the identity of being on equal footing, or it'll generate more corruption by taking more resources from that particular group, by shrinking the overall amount to a smaller point and having super rich people go to the super top. And we were already seeing examples of that with multi-billionaires that are existing in the world today with the current economic circumstances, which was an unthinkable amount of money 100 years ago. So that's my take on it. Do you guys have a take on that?
Yeah. So I would just say that when it comes to poverty, at least, I think really only the only way you can really do anything about that is you need to have it to where people's efforts are actually rewarded. Not necessarily give them more money, but if someone is working hard and they're doing, day-to-day things, they should be able to at least live comfortably with not having to worry about not having a home or something,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what he means, because like if you have bad situations like that, then it's easier to just say potentially go out and rob someone or something, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that way that's technically a form of corruption, because the system is so messed up that they can't just work and have a normal life, that it forces them to do bad things.
Mm-hmm. I also see Kyle's comment as well about that particular thing. I would actually strongly encourage you to actually look into the actual research that shows that, because there actually is a very, very discernible difference between those two things. And the fact that bribes work on people who make below 30K isn't surprising. Desperate people will basically take a hand at anything to try and get themselves wherever they think is going to make them better, regardless if it actually helps them or not. I don't think discussing or thinking about an individual who's willing to take a bribe who makes under a certain amount of income point is going to really show a difference in a value. I think the inherent difference of those particular things is the reasons behind why someone might take a bribe. Because I would say that the difference between it is that you might get an individual who makes a certain median income of like what we were discussing before, but we'll say 75 to 80K, where they reach that comfortable level. I think that the reasons that person, might be susceptible to a bribe are going to be inherently different than the person who is going to make that 30,000 or less. But I don't think that the instances of those two individuals taking the bribe is going to actually be different. I think they will. I think they're just going to do it for different reasons. Because I think that like someone who's making that amount of money, for instance, the 80K, goes $30,000, I can invest in this, this, and this, and then I'll have even more money at the end of the day. So of course I'm going to take the bribe. Versus the person who's at the low level of 30K and then going, I can't get to put food on the table. I'm going to take the bribe because I need to do that. And so like that's I think they're going to do it still, both. I just think they're just going to do it for different reasons. But that's my take on that particular thing. Let's go on to the next question, Kyle's.
Of Kyle's?
Yeah, if that's okay with you guys, unless you guys want to jump on that.
Mom, okay.
Okay.
I don't care.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Alright, also from Kyle. By the way, hi Code Blue Ninja, welcome back.
Hello.
Let's see, from Kyle. Open source helps to decrease the chances of having corrupted code. Maybe open source government can do the same thing?
Do you guys want to take this?
Well, the only thing I'll say is this. There are definitely consequences to the actions you take, and I don't particularly know, so that's my stance on it. I'm not sure what would necessarily fix it, so that's why I feel like in general people should just try to work together to find the best solution, whether it be open source or something else.
Yeah. So it's like when you say open source, I'm getting more confused about what you particularly mean by open source. Because we've seen several words where when they're applied to one thing, they mean one thing, but if they're applied to some other object, they mean something completely different, and that's what's confusing me for me. But I don't know if it would decrease it, because it's like, if people are determined enough, they will absolutely hide it.
Yeah.
Or do whatever they need to like hide it away from somewhere, to like keep out of trouble. So I don't know if it would help to decrease it. It might like decrease it short term, but if you give people long enough, they're gonna find a way to break past it.
I mean, honestly, I don't even think it would take that long. I think that
Yeah.
like, I think it would, if you did something like that, it would eventually, like, people would have to adjust to find the workaround.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would also, I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
that's
but
all right.
I think this is kind of important. If you don't try anything and you don't do anything, then nothing ever happens. So basically, if you try the open source and the idea works and the other people try to corrupt, they're trying to work around you guys working around the corruption. So then you need to always fight back and be informed and change it however to make it better in whatever way you can.
Okay. I mean, yes, I agree to that to some extent, but here's the thing I think that's important. I think if you're going to change it, if you're going to change it once, be prepared to continually always be changing it.
That's literally what I just said.
Yeah, I know that, but like, I mean, I'm just thinking like the Constitution, right? Like for the United States, right, was intended to essentially be retooled, reworked every 20 years. Like the entire structure for the whole government was supposed to be, basically cleaning house every 20 years, and that didn't happen. So the time it took for them to write the document, for the time it took to clean the house, corruption already took place in the states. And so the point what I'm trying to get to is this: like, if you're going to be prepared to change it, you need to be prepared to change it quickly.
Sorry, that just reminds me of this one Tumblr post. I don't have it because I didn't think it'd apply. If I had known that was going to be the case, I would have found it. But it's essentially a post about ad blockers. Because, companies pull out ads.
Sure.
A lot of people don't want to watch the ads, so they make ad blockers, and now there are companies who are making ad blockers, and then there are people who are blocking those, and it's just...
It is spiraling. It's just creating like more and more and more and more.
And it's just like, how many blockers are you going to put into that name right there? Okay, so let's see. We've got 20 minutes and about 3 more questions, one of which is like a leave-off question. So
Okay, all right.
I do appreciate all the comments coming through, even if I'm not able to read them out loud. So I do appreciate all of you.
All right, is there any in there that we need to read, or?
Let's see. It's one really quick one from Code Blue Ninja is just, as long as there are wants and needs, there is corruption.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, that literally ties into kind of what we were saying before.
Yep.
And then from
Absolutely.
Matthew, we've got Kyle's comment was about the money threshold to happiness, which you went into.
Yeah.
And then the last 2 are from Matthew. Corruption can only be prevented by the good of mankind, which ones who lack a moral compass will sadly see no glory in great human kindness. This world is sick and broken. Only fight against corruption is works in goodwill.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm reading verbatim here, so.
Okay. All right. Okay. I mean, I don't agree with that necessarily, but I want, for me, I want that to be the case. I just don't feel like humans actually work that way. But I mean, I would say this. I have hope that humans, eventually aspire to be like that, like can actually get to that particular level. I just don't see that happening like right now. All
Shall
right.
we move on to the next question?
Yes, we'll move on to the next question.
Oh gosh, something's... I'm trying to click on the 8 here,
Sure.
but it's like being slow on my end. There we go.
Okay.
What are the most dangerous aspects of corruption?
I think the most dangerous aspects of corruption are typically the things that we don't see. I think when money changes hands from a politician and into a politician's hands, and they're essentially bribed or told to feel, vote, or say things in a certain way, not knowing what those particular things are and supporting that particular individual has a lot of damning potential effects involved when it comes to those kind of things. I also think that corruption can often lead to mass death on the parts of both, forms of conflict like war, but it also can come from, not doing the right thing at the right time. Trump. Oh, I'm sorry. I had a cough. Oh my gosh. Perhaps not doing things in a fast way to prevent the loss of life could potentially be an example of how corruption could be dangerous. Not saying for sure, but possibly. So when do you guys want to take it?
Yeah, I guess I'll say something on this one. So, for me, at least in my opinion, it kind of goes off of what you were saying. So pretty much it's like this. I think one of the most dangerous aspects of corruption is basically the power hold it has over people. So generally speaking, like some people get complacent with basically the fact that there is corruption and they don't want to fight back because they don't know how or they just can't in general, and that makes it easier for the people who are corrupting to corrupt. And I feel like that is a very dangerous thing, and I feel like that's why it's the people's responsibility who can do something to do something as in whatever way they can.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Like, I agree with both portions. If you can't see it, you can't fight it. Or you can, but it's going to be difficult. And if you don't have the power, or you don't make the choice to actively fight against it, it's way easier for them to continue what they're doing because they think they're getting away with it. Why, if you're going to get away with it, unfortunately, some people are just going to keep doing it. So.
Yep.
It's definitely one of those things that if it just continues to build up like that, it gets way worse, and who knows, it results in things like that on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, this is one riot, and then there's another one. It's a mess.
Oh, although look at that rubber ducky, though. It's intense.
Yeah, that's a very big rubber ducky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really have anything new to that because what I find most dangerous is like sometimes you can't fight back against it, or you can't even see what you're fighting against. Let me go ahead and check up the comment section here. Hey, we gotta laugh.
Yeah. I'm guessing he's laughing at the duck.
This was actually sent before the riot picture, so.
Oh,
I think he
okay.
was laughing at the Trump cough.
He was absolutely laughing at the Trump.
The Trumpitis, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, thank God it's over. Yeah. I don't care whatever side of the aisle people are on. I'm not gonna say your views are wrong. That particular individual I'm not a fan of, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw up the next picture first before I actually throw up the question here.
Okay.
So it's a warning. This kind of freaked me out when I first found it. So.
She's easily freaked out.
Huh?
What?
I mean, I do, yeah. But even you had an eyebrow raise at this one.
Yeah, it was pretty weird, not even gonna lie. Yeah.
Nope. Nuh-uh.
It's just super weird. It's like an Uchiha with like money and like evil look. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is, are certain types of people more likely to be corrupt than others? And for one, we're not trying to, well, I don't think we're trying to cast blame. It's just a more general thing.
Yeah, so I was the one who kind of wrote this particular question, and I'm going to tell you where my question was leaning, and I'll tell you why. I think that certain groups of people are more likely to be corrupted than others, and I think that there are two different groups that are equally likely to be corrupted. I think it's the people who are extremely impoverished, extremely, on the underside of society, the people who are the most needy, the people who represent essentially everywhere like that would be called bottom. Anything that's being associated with that in any society, I think that group is a very high chance of being easily corrupted. I think the other group are the people who have the most power, who are in control of the most things. So I think those particular types of people are the people that are most likely to be corrupted. And I think it's because they have the most to gain and they have the most to lose. And so they do it for different reasons. A person who's extremely needy only stands to gain. A person who is in power is always going to be, at least at some part, in fear of losing that power. And because of that, I think they're likely to take actions that would corrupt them. That's my particular 2 cents on it. I'd like to hear what you think, Aaron, actually.
Sorry, what was that?
I'd like to hear what you think about that particular question.
Well, in my personal opinion, I feel like you're kind of right about that. Generally speaking, from what I see, is that people with more power, they're more tended to be the ones who are, I guess, the corruptors.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, they wouldn't be the ones who would be corrupted. They would be the ones corrupting the target of whatever malicious intent they have. So, like in your example, like the lower people, since generally where the whole world is kind of run by money, in a sense, the whole world is run by money. It's easy for people with a lot of money to target people who don't have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's definitely the lower end people. I don't know if that's the right term, but the more unfortunate people who are definitely targeted for whatever reason.
For the most needy?
Yeah.
Okay. And Rose, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can agree with a lot of that too. Especially with the whole difference between who's doing the corrupting and who's being corrupted. Like you mentioned earlier, if you're more needy, you're more likely to be corrupted because it's one of those mentalities where if you've got nothing to lose, what's stopping you?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose, you're gonna go for it because at that point in time, you're kind of the mindset of it's not gonna get worse, so why not at least try and make things better, even if it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where Matthew's point of the human goodwill and the moral compass should take into effect, because just because it can benefit you doesn't mean it benefits someone else. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where people should take that into account.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good tie-in. I like that.
Yeah. So it's like, and like you mentioned earlier, if you do have the power, you're more likely to be one of the ones corrupting because you've got the power to essentially, if a person's needy enough, get them to do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of dirtying their hands rather than yours, especially if it doesn't happen to leave a trail.
Yeah.
And then, like, other types of people I would assume would maybe be, like, just like anybody that can really be taken advantage of, whether it's monetary needs or, like, emotional needs, or, well, that's more of a personal scale of corruption rather than a global or international level for the most part. But, like, if you can be taken advantage of in some way, shape, or form, it's gonna happen, maybe not to you, but to somebody who's similar.
Mm-hmm.
Which I find unfortunate.
You guys, here's the thing though, I wonder, do you think that there are people who fall in between those particular groups that are also equally susceptible to this type of corruption?
I feel like there's exceptions to every rule. So in any particular opportunity, if someone who wants to corrupt someone has a certain target and the person they're going after has those set parameters, they will try to corrupt them no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If people have a will, they'll eventually find a way, and unfortunately that's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate because it's like you can absolutely be someone who has such an amount of power and you can get corrupted. It's just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen as often as if you don't have that much power, but it happens.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next question.
Yeah, this is the last one we have set up for today, and it's more of an introspective question here. I think Yeah, English. Come on. I may not be an English major, but come on. Alright. So I'm gonna show the picture. Which one would be a good idea? Nah, question first. Leave the image for later, like right before the ending here. Question number 10. A question to the audience, our viewers, and you can even throw this to whoever you know, if they're willing to answer. How much are we willing to tolerate before we finally decide enough is enough when it comes to corruption in the system? Essentially, what type of world do we really want to give the next generation?
Yep, that is a critical question that I sincerely hope that everyone in the chat considers, shares, discusses. I think those things are incredibly important because ultimately, you know, we're the ones who are going to be the shepherds of the world in a very, if we're not already in the very near future. And what kind of world do we want to leave the next generation? Because I know that the one we got was not the one we wanted. I'd like to first, before we wrap this up, thank you, Aaron, for being a guest. I hope that you know, in the near future you might want to come on again. I think it was nice to have an extra voice on this particular one, and I want to know if everyone agrees. So in the chat or in the comments, or send us an email. Did you like the extra guest? If so, let us know.
They better like me.
They better like you. Look at that. There's the sass right there. Jeez.
Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh yeah, we can't do the movie next Friday.
Huh? Why?
We can't do the movie next Friday.
Why?
Food.
Oh yeah, Beppa de Becca, or whatever the hell that thing is called. Yeah, I'll always like, you know, I'll mess it up 100% of the time. Yeah. All right. You know what? Maybe we can. Maybe we can do both. We'll find out. So.
Find out next time.
Yeah, and so this has been a wonderful discussion. Who knows? Maybe one of the people who were in the chat today might get asked to be a guest on a future episode. If you guys are interested, let us know. Until next time, it's been great. See you in the next one.
We bid you adieu. Oh, come on.